All right, guys. So we are going to start our new story today, which is called Heartbeat by David Yu. So, our guided question is: how do people's unique points of view and experiences affect the way they view the world? By the end of the lesson, you'll be able to monitor your reading comprehension by reading, summarizing, and analyzing Heartbeat by David Yu. So, Heartbeat is a short story written by David Yu. Um, and David Yu's parents moved to the US from Korea in the 1960s. Then the family returned to Korea for a few years when Yu and his sister were young. The children grew up speaking English and Korean. Eventually, both Yu and his sister became writers. His parents, who were not native English speakers, find it amusing that both their children now write in English for a living. Most of Yu's stories are funny. He says if readers can laugh, they keep reading. He says that he would never want to write something just to teach a lesson. He also would never want to read something that sounds like a guy is whining. Hughes says he writes like this because the books he enjoys reading are funny. He looks for comedy in the movies he sees too. Looking at the funny side of life helps him to write about difficult situations. Humor is like a protective blanket. It makes it easier to talk about things that otherwise would be too hard to face or write about. So let's look at our vocab words this week. So we have moot, which is an adjective having little or no relevance. Sarcastic is the use of words that mean the opposite of what you really want to say in order to insult someone, show irritation, or to be funny. Futile is an adjective which is useless or pointless. And claustrophobic is having extreme or irrational fear of small, confined spaces. So, just some questions to think about is: do you ever work for something that was futile? So, maybe you worked really, really hard to make a team or something. And if you didn't make it, that would be kind of futile if you didn't make it. A candidate running for presidency who lost, their efforts might be futile because they lost. An example of sarcasm is kind of saying something that you don't mean, sometimes to be funny or sometimes to maybe be a little bit mean. So, yeah, I got tons of sleep last night. I feel rested when you haven't slept at all. It's sarcasm. So, we're going to start reading our story together. So, this is Heartbeat by David Yu. My nickname's Heartbeat because my friends swear that you can actually see the pulse on my bare chest. I've always been skinny. Everyone assumes I'm a weakling because I'm so thin. I prefer lean and mean or wiry. Despite being a three-sport athlete, I decided to do something about it this fall when Sarah, the girl I have a crush on, said, "Oh my gosh, you are so skinny." She was visibly repulsed by my sunken chest as I stepped off the soccer bus after practice. I silently vowed to do everything within my power to become the after picture. I was 16 years old, but I looked like I was 11. For the rest of fall, I did countless push ups and curled free weights until I couldn't bend my arms. I got ridiculously strong and defined, but I wasn't gaining weight. I wanted to be thicker. I didn't care about getting stronger if nobody could tell. I did research and started lifting heavier weights and lower reps and supplemented my meals with weight gainer shakes, egg whites, boiled yams, and tubs of cottage cheese. I forced myself to swallow the daily caloric intake equivalent of three overweight men and still wasn't able to increase my mass. I have a ridiculously fast metabolism. Over Christmas break, I cut out all useless movement, like ping pong and staircases. Because I'm like a sieve, the 83 calories in a mini Snickers bar is moot because I waste 90 chewing it. I returned to school in January depressed because I was still Heartbeat in everyone's eyes. I constantly weighed myself. At least once an hour, no matter where I was, I'd find a bathroom so I could take off my shirt and flex in the mirror for a couple minutes. I was so frustrated that nothing was working. But the frustration didn't last. I was sitting in study hall 2 weeks ago when Sarah said the magic words: "Have you been working out, Dave? You look bigger." Couldn't tell she was being sarcastic. I went home and inspected myself in the mirror. I did look bigger. So, what point of view is the story being told in? First, second, or third? So, we know that he's saying I, me, my mirror, my crush. So, we know that this being first. People call Dave Heartbeat because they say they can actually see his heart beating out of his chest. Do you think they really can see that though? I think it's just a way of them kind of teasing him, but it's something that he really took to heart. And why was it moot for Dave to eat an 83 calorie Snickers bar? Well, it was moot because he said that it took him 90 calories. He would burn 90 calories by eating it. So he wasn't putting on that weight that he was trying to. But then I realized that the reason I'd accidentally worn, but then I realized the reason I'd accidentally worn two t shirts under my rugby shirt that day. It was just an illusion. I was futilely stuffing my face and religiously pumping iron and failing to alter my appearance. And now I'd stumbled on the simplest solution to look bigger. I felt like I was reborn. I went to school the next day wearing two t shirts under my turtleneck. I felt solid. By the end of the week, I was wearing three t shirts under my rugby shirt. This Monday, I tucked four t shirts under my plaid button down. It gave me traps that didn't exist. My Q tip sized shoulders transformed into NBA grapefruit deltoids. I could tell my classmates subtly regarded me differently. It was respect. Sarah gave me a look I'd never seen before, as if she felt it, as if she felt safer around me. I was walking down the hallway at the end of the day and must have twisted awkwardly because suddenly my zipper literally exploded and all my t shirts spilled out of my pants. Luckily, the hallway was empty and I was wearing a belt. I realized I had artificially outgrown my clothes. My button downs were so tight that a few seconds after jamming the extra layer into my pants, the pressure would suddenly bunch the cloth up in random places, so it looked like I had a goiter on my shoulder or something. I complained to my parents over dinner last night. I don't fit into anything anymore, I said. It reflects poorly on you guys. You could get arrested. What are you talking about? You look the same as always. You're still my little boy, my dad replied, putting me in a headlock, giving me a noogie. I glared at him. So, why did Dave describe stuffing his face as futile? Because he wasn't gaining any weight. So, all Christmas break, he was eating 3 extra meals a day and stopped working out and did as little as he could, but he wasn't gaining the weight that he wanted to. Dave starts layering all of his clothing because one day when he accidentally wears two shirts under his clothes, um, his crush Sarah asks if he's getting bigger. So he thinks he just cracked the code to gaining weight without gaining weight. So the question I have is, do you think Sarah and the other kids were really showing Dave respect because he was wearing more clothes? He said that they all had a different way of looking at him and that he thought that Sarah looked like she felt safe around him. I would say that probably his like swagger changed because he felt like he was bigger. I don't necessarily know if the rest of them were. I think it was probably in his head because he was kind of thinking that he was looking bigger and that's what he thought the issue was. How do you think Dave felt about his parents saying he looked the same as always and that he was still their little boy? Probably not happy, right? Because he wants to get bigger clothes and the whole thing is that he is incredibly insecure about his weight and they don't get it. So them saying that he's small or looks the same isn't what he wants to hear. He wants to look bigger because he thinks that's what is giving him that respect. I need a new ski jacket, I said. It was true. I could barely clap my hands with all the layers I was wearing. I was getting out of control at this point. The four t shirts under my wool sweater were smushing my legs together like a male girdle. It was a small price to pay. Nobody called me Heartbeat anymore, I reminded myself. After dinner, I went to a party. Even though it was winter, I opted to hang out on the back porch as much as possible because it was so hot inside. Being indoors was like a sauna, but Sarah was in the basement, so I headed that way. We were talking, and she noticed that I was dripping with perspiration. You're trembling, she said, touching my shoulder. She thought I was nervous talking to her and probably thought it was cute, but in reality, I was on the verge of passing out because I was wearing four tight t shirts and two long sleeves under my wool sweater, not to mention the sweatpants tucked into my tube socks to add heft to my formerly chicken legs quads. She squeezed my biceps. Geez, Dave, how many layers are you wearing? I couldn't even feel her squeezing them. So, if we think about all the clothes Dave is wearing, he has four t shirts under a wool sweater. Um, he said that he had four tight t shirts, two long sleeves, sweatpants tucked in his tube socks over his clothes. So, he has tons of layers on to a party in the winter. So parties are already like crowded as it is. There's a lot of people pushed into a house. So he thinks he's actually going to pass out. He is wearing so many layers that he can't even feel her like touch his arm. So what do you think about all these layers? Do you think people believe that he's bulked up and those are muscles? I think people probably are catching on to the fact that it's just all these extra clothing that he's wearing. So, to think and discuss, our question really is, how did Dave's experiences and point of view affect the way he viewed the world? Do you think that the other kids intended to say something that would affect him so much? Excuse me. So, kind of really brings into that sometimes somebody can make a comment that's really small and that can, we might not think anything of, that can really, really affect someone. So his view of the world was that people didn't respect him, and the only way he could gain that respect was if he gained weight and he got bigger and bulkier. And that's when he thought he was getting bigger or bulkier, is when he felt like all of a sudden his crush liked him and people were um, like showing him that he was like the respect he wanted. I don't think that the kids intended to say something that would affect him so much. I think they were just teasing him because he was skinny. But sometimes that's when you think about it, sometimes a joke can go too far, and sometimes people can be joking around and they don't really realize how much it affects them. So, your results are to understand how people's unique points of view and experiences affect the way they view the world. We have been monitoring your comprehension by reading, summarizing, and analyzing. Your exit ticket is to make sure that you share a takeaway from this story in class. We will finish tomorrow, and you have your L8 activity to complete, which is a vocab and comprehension check in on this story.